Hello, and welcome to Ask Your Inspector from Scott Home Inspection, a podcast where we answer questions about all things inspection related, home inspections, energy services, and rental inspections. I'm here today with Chris Scott from Scott Home Inspection, and we're going to answer some questions about energy related items today.
That's right. How you doing today, Joe?
Yeah, I'm doing just fine.
Good. All right, today we're answering a question that we get quite a bit about Denver's specific blower door testing requirements, specifically on additions and remodels within the city. If you're not familiar with the blower door test, it's more so on the builder side of things, but it is an air leakage test that gives you a baseline for how leaky your house is and how much energy you can save by having a tighter home envelope. And so most counties in Colorado require this on new construction level, and some counties have specific remodel addition requirements like Denver County. Mm-hmm. And so there's a few things that actually trigger that in the county. Joe, if you want to talk about those.
Yeah, so the blower door test has become very common. I mean, most builders or contractors are familiar with this thing at this point, where you're setting up this test post-construction to make sure that you're compliant. But what's happened now, since there's not like a statewide energy code in Colorado, is every city, every county has kind of got their own interpretation and how they want to use these things. So specifically today, talking about Denver, if you've got a project and it's an addition, you can kind of fall into a couple of different categories for how you're going to get this test done and what the requirements are going to be. The important takeaway is knowing the size of the addition. If the addition size is greater than 30% of the existing square footage, it's going to trigger these kind of extra requirements. And it's important to note, too, that 30% of the square footage does not include the basement. It's just above grade square footage.
Interesting. I actually didn't know that. So that's good. That's good to know. So the requirement's only above 30%. So if you have 1,000 square foot house and you're adding a 300 square foot addition or more, then you will need to meet these requirements. Below, you can basically forget about all this stuff. You don't need to do a blower door. Is that right?
Yeah. And the kind of worst case scenario would be you didn't know about any of this. Your project scope was just at the addition and you haven't touched the existing house at all. And you get to the very end of your project and find out that, I need to do a post-construction test. Like, can I isolate the addition? Because that's the only area that we did work in.
Right.
There is no blower door test tests the whole envelope and you cannot separate sections out.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So there's basically two routes to go with this, correct? There's if you are above 30%, then you have to do a blower door at the end. But one of the options, essentially the blower door at the end needs to meet what's called 5 air changes per hour.
Yeah.
This is quite a bit higher than the standard of a new construction, which was 3 air changes per hour. So 5, it's not super difficult to meet, but it's also for an older house where you're putting an addition on a pretty old house, it can be pretty difficult. Yeah. So Denver gives you a second option, which would be doing a pre-test and a post-test. So maybe talk about that.
Yeah. If you're kind of caught at the end of your project and you weren't aware of this and you got to run a post-construction test only and you got to hit 5 ACH, I mean, you might find that you're just way, way over top of that requirement. And all of a sudden you're stuck having to seal up and do all this work on the existing home that you might not have planned on doing at all. So the really nice thing that you can do is you can set a baseline on the existing home before construction even begins. And whatever you set that benchmark at, all you have to do post-construction is beat it. So, sometimes I'm having a conversation with a contractor and I hate to give the impression that I'm like trying to upsell or double dip on a contractor, but it's so much smarter to just set that pre-construction blower door test, because you can set it at 12 ACH or 20 ACH.
Right.
Then all you got to do on the back end is beat it by just a little bit and you're good to go.
Yeah. And almost every time you're going to beat it, because if you're adding an addition, you're going to be building that to today's building codes. So that's going to be tight. You're going to be adding square footage, which ultimately ends up helping the blower door if you know how the equation works. So it's just, it's almost, it's so easy to pass in that situation that it's almost kind of crazy that they make you do it, but hey, we don't make the rules. So we're just trying to help contractors out as much as possible, because it does make it easier on you, and it ends up saving you money, because if you had to suddenly go back through the older house and try to seal things up, then you got problems there. You got expensive problems.
That same hypothetical house where it's like, we came and we did the pre-construction blower door and found out that the house was 15 ACH. And we come out and we do post-construction, and now it's, we see pretty significant improvement generally. Things will get knocked down to 10 or 7, realistic numbers, good numbers, fine numbers. But that same house, if you didn't set that pre-construction baseline, now you're coming out after the addition's on and running the test, and it's like, all right, you're required to hit 5 now because you didn't set a baseline, and you're performing at 15. Like, you've got so much ground to cover to get down to those compliance levels. So I just am always trying to emphasize with contractors when I have the opportunity to set the baseline, because it just makes life so much easier on the back end.
Definitely. And we should say that if you read the Denver codes, it says only the addition has to meet that 5 air change requirements. But like Joe was saying earlier, there's really no way most of the time to block off just an addition section. If there is a really simple way, like it's, doored off, then it's, then maybe you could just do the back end test. But in our experience, it's just so much easier and so much less worry about this test if you just do the baseline as well.
Yeah. Isolating one section of a house from another and then trying to do an air leakage test is, I don't know if I've ever been able to successfully do it, because there's just so much transfer through the walls. Right. You're talking about separating interior wall assemblies. I mean, it comes through electrical outlets, around the flooring, across the sill plates and the foundation, through the attic. Like, it's really, really tough, and I would not recommend that's what you're shooting for.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So if you are, building a house or some sort of addition in Denver County, you need to go through these requirements. That would be our recommendation. That is the answer to the remodel question. And, if you have any further questions, reach out to us and we can get you scheduled on that pretest as well.
Yep, you can go to scotthomeinspection.com and schedule there. And if you had any questions that you wanted to ask us directly, you can go to info@scotthomeinspection.com and send us a question there.